This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith, and this is CBN NewsWatch. 2 wins at the Supreme Court today for religious freedom. Faith leaders are praising the decision while acknowledging there's some limitations. In Little Sisters of the Poor, the court upheld Trump administration rules allowing employers to refuse, on the basis of religious beliefs, to subsidize birth control. An Obama-era law had previously said that employers must cover the cost of contraceptives. The states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania had challenged the Trump rule. Today, the White House said that women can access birth control coverage at little to no cost, even if their employer has a religious objection by receiving it through the Title X program. In the other court case, the court agreed with 2 Catholic schools that faith-based organizations have the right to hire people who share their religious beliefs. The case involved Catholic teachers who taught Catholic doctrine and were fired by their schools. They sued the employers for job discrimination. We're joined now by Brad Jacob, the Associate Dean for Online Programs at the Regent University School of Law. Professor Jacob, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Wendy.
Well, you've been following both of these cases. Let's talk first about Little Sisters of the Poor. How important is their win for religious liberty?
Well, it's not really a religious liberty case, although it affects that. This was simply an issue about whether the regulations put in place by the Trump administration that protect the ability of religious employers to not offer contraceptives that violate the religious beliefs, whether those regulations are acceptable. And the court said they are. It's a very different situation than where we were under the Obama administration when the regulations were not permitting religious liberty and the religious claimants were trying to overrule them.
Well, Ryan Anderson at the Heritage Foundation is predicting that a Democratic president in the White House would try and weaken or remove the Little Sisters regulation, and the case could be back in court again. Do you see it that way? Does this ruling just provide temporary relief for the Little Sisters?
Probably. It will probably get challenged regardless of the presidential election. They'll come back with another challenge saying that the rules are arbitrary, and we expect to see it back in the court again. If a Democrat wins the White House the next election, I absolutely expect these regulations to change, to go back to something more like the Obama administration's rules that will much more limit the ability of religious ministries to get exemptions from the contraception mandate. So as long as we're dealing with regulations that can be changed, this can keep going back and forth.
Yeah. Well, in the Catholic school case, the court has ruled that employees of religious schools, hospitals, and social service centers cannot sue for employment discrimination. How important is this ruling for faith-based organizations?
This is an important ruling and a good one. It's consistent with prior law. There are actually 2 exemptions that Christian employers have, or any faith-based employer has, from employment discrimination laws. One is that you can always discriminate on the basis of your religious beliefs with any employee, even a housekeeping person who's cleaning bathrooms. You can say they have to share our religious beliefs. That's in the statute. This, however, is a constitutional exemption. They call it the ministerial exemption, that the court has found out of the free exercise and non-establishment requirements of the First Amendment that says if you're dealing with someone who has ministerial duties or religious teaching duties, you can discriminate in any way. Essentially, they're saying the government has no business telling a Christian school, a church, a ministry, whom you hire to teach and promulgate your faith. And so this is a strong victory for ministries and churches and schools everywhere.
That was Brad Jacobs at the Regent University School of Law. And for more political coverage, tune into Faith Nation tonight. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, despite the surge in new cases, the White House is pushing schools to reopen this fall. At a roundtable health discussion today, President Trump put the pressure on state and local officials to put students back in the classroom. Caitlin Burke has the story.
The risks of keeping students home outweigh the risks tied to the coronavirus. That from health and education experts gathered at the White House Tuesday to discuss safely reopening schools in the fall.
When children are out of school, they are missing more than just time in the classroom. They're missing the laughter of their friends, learning from their teachers, and the joy of recess and play. For children with disabilities, without access to technology, or whose homes are not a safe place, the situation can be even worse.
President Trump says he'll put pressure on governors and other officials as a part of an all-out effort by the White House to reopen the nation's schools. And he accused anyone who opposes the decision of doing so for political reasons.
And we hope that most schools are going to be open. We don't want people to make political statements or do it for political reasons.
School districts are running out of time to make decisions about what the fall will look like, finding there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution because the virus looks different in each community. Still, since young people aren't severely affected by the virus, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and many of America's top health officials agree with the president's push to get students back in the classroom.
There will be some counties where the infection is so low, you won't have to worry. In the other situation, you might have counties or parts of the state in which there is enough viral activity that you might want to modify scheduling. Things like masks at all time, things like alternating morning, afternoon, decreasing the size and the space between desks.
Really, the bottom line is that we have to learn how to live with this virus and manage it so it doesn't manage us. And going back to school is critically important, as we know, for many, many reasons.
Florida's governor has already ordered all public schools to reopen in the fall. Harvard University, on the opposite end of the spectrum, announcing this week that its fall term will be entirely online. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. And today, Vice President Mike Pence spoke during a White House coronavirus task force briefing at the Education Department. He continued the administration's push to get schools reopened this fall.
We can't let our kids fall behind academically, but it's important that the American people remember that for children that have mental health issues, for special needs children, for nutrition, for children in communities facing persistent poverty, the school is the place where they receive all those services.
Meanwhile, many states have been rolling back their reopenings. The U.S. hit another new record of coronavirus cases Tuesday with 58,000 in a single day. The death rate remains low, at least for now. This is as the Trump administration has formally notified the United Nations that it will withdraw from the World Health Organization. It made good on a promise the president made in May. However, it won't happen until next year. President Trump has harshly criticized the organization for its response to the coronavirus and accused it of bowing to Chinese influence. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now to discuss this development. Lori, Democrats say stepping away from the World Health Organization, the WHO, is a huge mistake. What's your opinion?
Well, my first opinion is we need to look at the calendar and remember that there's a presidential election in, believe it or not, less than 4 months from now. It's hard to believe it's going to be so soon. So we shouldn't be surprised to see Democrats criticizing President Trump's decisions. We're probably going to see that in a lot of varieties and situations in the months to come. But we need to remember, as you pointed out, Wendy, that the truth is this withdrawal from the WHO won't take effect until July 6th. 2021. So an entire year from now, we need to remember President Trump is a deal maker, and what he's doing here is putting pressure on the WHO to get rid of the Director General Tedros within the next year. He is the problem, as the president sees it, because of Tedros' ties to China. The president says every step of the way, Tedros has sided with the Chinese at the expense of the rest of the world by not presenting accurate information about the coronavirus early. For example, Tedros put out a tweet saying the coronavirus wasn't easily transmitted from person to person when he likely knew that that was not the case. The United States gives $450 million to the World Health Organization. We are the largest contributor, providing a whopping 15% of its funding. Some political insiders see this as the WHO being put on notice, kind of like on probation. And if they get rid of Tedros within the next year, America's standing with the organization will probably go back to the way it was before. So we need to keep a close eye on this and see if the WHO will yield to this pressure and get rid of Tedros.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that plays out. Well, what do you think about kids going back to school this fall? Is that a good idea? Should it happen?
It really should. It's very important for the children to go back to school, not only for economic health for the entire nation, but for physical health as well. The American Academy of Pediatricians said children are at greater risk of morbidity and mortality if the schools remain closed. And as the vice president said, school isn't just a place where kids learn, but it's a place where kids with mental health issues and special needs are served. School is a place where kids in poverty receive healthy meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in some cases. We know that since kids have been cooped up at home during this pandemic, they've been abused and neglected in greater numbers than usual, and they're not going to school where teachers can observe evidence of abuse and contact authorities. Kids living in poverty often don't have the internet capabilities to keep up with their lessons, and when kids are at home, sometimes parents cannot work, leading to more poverty, and in many cases, we know that poverty leads to lots of poor health outcomes. Learning at home doesn't work for too many kids because they don't have parents or caregivers that can help them learn. So they need to get back to school. The CDC and other agencies are issuing new guidelines, lots of suggestions about how to open safely, but ultimately it will be up to the individual school districts. The big challenge will be what happens when kids go home, Wendy, when they might go home to parents and grandparents who are at great risk of complications, and also teachers who are at greater risk for complications from COVID-19 might want to stay away from the classroom.
Yeah, that will be the big test.
Yeah.
No pun intended, I guess, right? Go back to school.
Good one.
Thank you, Lori. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, coming up, China is being dubbed a bully. Find out how their increasingly aggressive behavior is threatening America's economy.
Having sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
A raging pandemic, high unemployment, and explosive social unrest. America is fighting all three dangers, but none of these is the greatest threat to our economic future. So what is? A superpower bully that wants to rule the world. Dale Hurd has the story.
From FBI Director Wray said the Chinese theft of American intellectual property is so vast, it's one of the greatest transfers of wealth in world history. Wray described an all-out assault on almost every sector of the American economy.
We've now reached the point where the FBI is opening a new China-related counterintelligence case about every 10 hours. China is engaged in a whole-of-state effort to become the world's only superpower by any means necessary.
Wray said half of all counterintelligence investigations now involve China, and China has stolen the personal data of most American adults. This as China seems to be trying to dominate an economically weak post-COVID-19 world through increasingly aggressive behavior. 20 Indian soldiers were killed last month in a surprise cross-border attack by the Chinese army. China is harassing its neighbors in the South China Sea, brazenly crushing democracy in Hong Kong and again threatening war with the United States. Asia has what some are calling a new bully, and China's expansionist ambitions are bringing it into conflict with many of its neighbors. China has ongoing border disputes with at least 8 nations, largely because it has claimed most of the international waters in the South China Sea for itself. It's even begun to demand land from Russia's Far East.
No country on China's periphery right now is safe from Chinese aggression. All those countries want a close relationship with the United States. We ought to have one.
China has now taken off the mask. It is now open about its ambitions, and the world is rising up against it.
China expert Stephen Mosher, author of Bully of Asia, says China has managed to anger or frighten most of its neighbors.
China has accomplished in 6 months what it would have taken America 10 years to accomplish, that is, to forge an anti-Chinese alliance out of the different nations of the Asia-Pacific Rim. The Philippines is backing away from China. Taiwan is beefing up its military even more because they see that after what's happened to Hong Kong, they're next.
Regardless of its threats, Mosher says China does not want a shooting war with the United States.
What it wants to do is it wants to use this gray area between war and peace to continue its cyber attacks, to continue its espionage in the United States and other countries. But it certainly would use force in the future if it thought it had achieved a position of dominance.
But China's only real military ally is North Korea, and China's increasingly bad behavior on the world stage is isolating it even more. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
America's only gospel competition show is back on Sunday nights. The series has now been running for 10 seasons. Recording artist Jonathan McReynolds signed on as a judge on the show last season, and he begins this season with some new music of his own. Ephraim Graham has more.
Is unmistakable. That is Jonathan McReynolds, who joins us now to talk more about that appearance. The talk of the BET Awards, you, Kane Brown, and the Ryman Auditorium, and your performance of People. Was there added pressure to be even more creative this year in light of the fact that you're all...
I wouldn't call it pressure. I would say more just opportunity or challenge. It was really, really cool to see everybody's come together. You know, we are the artists within the thing, so we have a little more insight to what everybody's doing. So we're hearing that Megan Thee Stallion's in the desert. We're hearing, you know, all these things that we know are happening, and we just wanted to make sure that we made our stamp on it as well.
Nice. What did you think, or what was it like to perform at the Ryman?
Oh man, it was my first time ever even being in there, and it's just amazing. You see all the pictures on the wall, and you see just, you know, Marian Anderson, you see just all the greats that have ever come through. You know, it was a learning experience for me even while I was in there, and just how sacred and legendary the place is.
Before I let you go, I do want to talk about your latest project, People. I'm sure that when you were writing this, you had no idea what would be unfolding as you're releasing this, but the project is certainly timely.
Obviously, you know, when I wrote it, and this happens on most songs, honestly, you know, I have a very small little inspiration, you know, whether it is something in life or something in a conversation, something in a prayer that, you know, I begin from, and I start to write the song, and sometimes I can feel the song starting to spread out and be more generalized in its meaning, even if it came from very specific inspiration. So absolutely, when I get to 2020 and it's released in a place that we're almost kind of physically delivered from people, we have an opportunity to kind of reflect in a way that we never have before, and just heal and think and consider in a way that we never have before. I have a song on there called Cathedral. It's all about being a cathedral for God, being a big temple, beautiful temple, big influence, a seat of a bishop in your world. I didn't know that we wouldn't be able to go to our favorite cathedrals through all that time when it was actually released. And ultimately, even though People kind of begins the question, it begins the discourse, the EP ends with a song called Grace. And I think ultimately that is the answer to all of this. Isms come from just us being human. It comes from being in this fallen state and needing Jesus and needing this gift of grace, and then needing to, you know, extend it to other people. And so I'm just really excited, you know, that God chose me to kind of create a little bit of a soundtrack for some people in these crazy times.
Before I let you go, want to ask, how are you feeling? What are you feeling as we are watching America now being forced to deal with its original sin of racism, if you will? It's great that we're making progress. It's great that some things are brought to light, but sometimes it's also deflating that it's just now being brought to light. It's like, how much you know, evidence or outcry or protest, how much do we need? But, you know, I guess we have to keep making these incremental changes, and I hope that it doesn't take a whole bunch of people dying and businesses being destroyed for people just to get the outrage, get the you know, the sense of helplessness and hopelessness that has marred my community for a very long time. And it's not because we are just innately, you know, down on ourselves or we're innately inferior, but we grew up in a culture that tends to tell us that from day one and treat us that way. And so when we see these things happening in the streets, that just confirms a narrative that we've already kind of been implicitly taught this entire time. And so it's just really, you know, a great possible pivot point for the country and, you know, I would hope for the church.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No spur falls, man. Come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
And finally, in Colombia, even dogs are frontline workers amid the COVID-19 pandemic. An 8-year-old chocolate lab named Eros trots through the city of Medellin to make food deliveries every day. He carries a straw basket in his jaw filled with fruits, vegetables, or packaged foods. He doesn't know addresses, but does remember the names of customers who've rewarded him with treats. The dog's owner says the mini market staff also rewards their 4-legged delivery helper with treats and his favorite head massages. What a cutie. Well, that's going to do it for us for this edition of CBN Newswatch. From all of us here, have a great day and God bless you.